Today's project will be the Monarch Butterfly Life Cycle. Materials for this project will be watercolor paper, pencil, watercolor paints, paintbrush, and water. Gather your materials and let's get started. I have here my watercolor paper, my Crayola paints, pencil, paintbrush, and we're going to start with the first stage of the caterpillar to butterfly transformation, which is egg. Typically, monarchs lay their eggs on milkweed. We're going to do a leaf. I'm going to do a little bite taken out of the side there. And finish up the other side of my leaf. Now we'll draw just 3 to 4 tiny little ovals or circles for our eggs. And when the caterpillars first hatch, they are very small. And we're going to do just a couple, 2 little caterpillars, kind of thin, wavy ovals on our leaf, and it looks like they've already started eating that milkweed plant. Now our next stage will be the caterpillar or larvae. They are usually in this stage for about 10 to 18 days. I'm going to start with an oval for his head. I'm going to mark where his bottom or end of him will be. I'm going to do the length of his body as just a gentle curve caterpillar shape. I'm going to add antenna on his head, and for his feet, a couple of round ovals or circles along the bottom. Anywhere from probably 9 to 10 of these little feet. The stripes, details like that, we're going to do with our paints. The next stage will be the beginning of the chrysalis, where the caterpillar hangs upside down in kind of a J shape. So I'm going to start with a gentle branch. I'm going to do this kind of J rounded shape. He's still got some volume to him, so it's going to be almost like a bubbled J shape. I'm going to try to do a couple of his little feet on the inner side, and then I'm still going to put his antennae. It takes about 12 hours from this stage to be in a full chrysalis. For the chrysalis, I'm going to start with the same thing, a branch, a kind of Y, and then I just add a V inside. Now the chrysalis, I'm going to start with a kind of triangle. I'm going to do a rounded center. I'm going to bring 2 sides down. Then it kind of forms a off-center point at the bottom where it's a little bit longer on one side. I'm going to add a little arch detail inside and make sure I have where it connects. Monarch will spend 10 to 18 days in the chrysalis stage before emerging as a butterfly. Now to start our butterfly, we're going to do a circle for the head, a small oval for the thorax, and a pointed oval for the abdomen. Now for the wing, I'm going to do a long arching line on one side and do the exact same thing on the other. Try to make him as symmetrical as possible. From the junction of the thorax and abdomen, I'm going to do a straight line out, same length on both sides. Now from the top, I'm going to do a curved, gentle curve goes in and connects curve to the bottom straight line. And same thing on the other side. I like to kind of follow the shape I want first before I actually put my pencil to paper. For the bottom wing, it's going to be 2 little lines coming from our abdomen. And from my top wing, I'm just going to do a big rounded curve. Make it rounded on both sides, connecting up, leaving a little space between. Now, I realized my one side is a little bit longer than the other, so I'm going to bring out this side a little more and use my eraser to fix that mistake. There we are. I'm going to do 2 antennae, and there I have the basic shape of my butterfly. Next, we will do the interior details of our wings, starting with the top forewing. I'm going to do a long teardrop shape following the top curve of my wing. Once I do it to one side, I'm going to go ahead and do it to the other. These are called wing cells. I'm going to follow my first shape, do a little line, make a same kind of almost curvy triangle shape on both sides. Try to make them as even as possible. Their wings are pretty symmetrical. Up at the top, I'm going to do kind of a rounded kind of rainbow shape. Add 2 of those coming off my first shape. And again, same thing on the other side. In the bottom, I'm going to do another little teardrop. I'm going to do 2 little tiny shapes in the very tops of my wings, basically little ovals. One final shape in the bottom of my top or forewing. And those aren't perfect, but they're perfect enough for me. Now on the bottom or hind wing, I'm going to start with a large teardrop shape coming right from the middle. And once I do it on one side, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other. Do one smaller on the top, like so, and our third on the bottom. And again, these are called wing cells. Now we have finished with our drawing, we are going to start with our paints. Now we're mixing just a few colors today. We're going to start with yellow. So I'm actually just going to use the yellow straight from my tray. So I'm going to take my brush, a little bit of water, and the first thing we're going to paint is our leaf. So I'm going to make sure my tray is wet. I have some water in there. It's a little bit green because I've accidentally put my green paint in there, but it'll work for today's project. So once I have some yellow on my brush, I'm just going to go in and paint the entire leaf yellow. I'm going to do 2 layers on this leaf, but first is just the yellow. So I'm going to gently fill it in, making sure I'm not going over or outside of my lines. And I'm not going to worry about going around the eggs or the caterpillars. Now I'm going to use some yellow in my large caterpillar or larvae here. I'm just basically going to do his back, and then I'm going to bring a couple little stripes down because monarch butterflies are stripy. I'm going to do the exact same thing in the hanging caterpillar here, just yellow back and then some stripes. I'm going to paint the entire chrysalis yellow as well. We're going to do a couple layers in each of these, so don't worry if you're a little confused. We're going to go over with our green and then also black in these. Now the next color I'm going to mix is a green. I'm going to use the lid of my tray and actually take a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow to get a little more, say, yellowy green color. I don't want the green straight from the tray. Now using a method called wet into wet, where I'm going right into wet paint, I'm going to put some green into my chrysalis, letting the paints mix together themselves on my paper. And I'm just going to leave that little It's kind of oval shape on the side, yellow. I'm going to dry my brush and kind of make a nice gentle fade. Maybe you add some water. I'm going to get some more green and do the same technique in my caterpillar. So I'm going to go along his back, and then I'm going to bring green down to his belly, making the characteristically striped body of the monarch butterfly caterpillar. So you can see his back is all green, and we just have some stripes coming down. Same thing for our caterpillar, preparing for his chrysalis, green along its back, and some stripes going inside. I'm going to pull a little more green down into my caterpillar's kind of face and body. Maybe put even some more yellow inside of him. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my leaf, except I'm going to go around my caterpillars and my eggs because I want them to stand out. So I'm going to be extra careful and extra slow to go around my egg shapes. You can see I want that egg to stay yellow, and around my caterpillar shapes. And if your paint is slightly wet, this should still work. You should still be able to control it around those shapes. Now, next I'm going to do brown. And this will be for the branch. And I'm just going to use the brown straight from my tray because I actually like this color brown. I'm going to fill in my branch shape, the Y, just nice coat of brown. And I'm going to do the same thing in both of my branches. Filling them in, making sure they're all pretty much the same color. Rinse your brush between colors. And the next color will be our orange. So I'm going to again use the lid of my paints here. I'm going to mix up orange and also going to put a little bit of yellow and red into it, depending on how orangey or red you want your color. Now we do want to mix up quite a bit of paint because we're going to paint the entire butterfly shape this color. So make sure you have plenty of water, plenty of paint, and you have a nice bright orange color. Now we're just going to fill in the entire wing shape of our butterfly. So I'm just going to work from the top down, spreading evenly my paint out, picking up more, just bringing that wet paint throughout my shape. And we're going to go over this with black, but this just helps us so we don't have any white spaces where there's overlap. And it'll actually help our black to be darker, to be over another color. I'm going to be careful to stay in my lines, but most importantly, I just want to stay in my butterfly shape and cells, those wing cells. I'm pretty happy with this color, and I think I'll have enough paint to get through the entire butterfly. And I don't need to worry about the body too much. However, if it goes into the body, that's fine. Might as well just fill it in so then the black on top of it will all be the same shade. There, I filled in my butterfly. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of red. And I'm going to put some dots while my paint's still wet into my wing cells, just so they have a little bit of extra texture. And this will look really nice when it's done. Just kind of smear it in. We don't have to worry about going in the lines because, again, we're going to go over with the black. This just adds maybe a little bit of difference of color in those cells, which is very natural. So next, I'm going to do my black. Now, I'm going to use the black straight from my tray here. I'm going to make sure I have plenty of water in there because I want it to be pretty dark black. Now I'm going to start by just a simple outline on my branch, just so it's a little bit clearer. We could also do this with a marker, but I have my paints here, and I want to keep it all the same. Marker sometimes will be a little too harsh. I'm going to outline my bottom branch as well. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see my paint starts to fade. Got kind of broken lines, possibly. That's okay, I just want it to stand out a bit in my final project. Now for my caterpillar larvae, I'm going to do his antenna. I'm going to trace his head, and then I'm going to go along his back and bring lines down, all the way down to his feet, but I'm going to go back in with the feet. See how I'm getting some nice curves? Just tracing the back, then down, tracing the back, then down. I'm going to come in and do each of his little feet with some more black. So then he looks like he's walking along. And trace the bottom of him as well. Now he just stands out quite a bit more. Do the same thing to my hanging caterpillar here. I'm going to very lightly trace the outside of him. And our kind of J shape. And then I'll give him some stripes as well. And his antenna, of course. Now you can make the lines kind of curving, following his body. Make it look as natural as possible. I'm going to trace the outside of my chrysalis as well. This one will be thinner lines if possible. Got details like that little cone shape, the side, and our little shape we left open there. And I want you guys to see how my lines aren't perfectly straight. Things in nature are pretty wavy. They aren't perfectly straight, so that's okay if it's a little wavy. Now I'm going to trace my leaf as well. And with the very tip of my paintbrush, I'm going to try to get the caterpillars so you can see them nice and tiny. Make them stand out on my leaf. And the eggs as well. You can just barely see them, but with a little black outline, they really stand out. So we finished those 4 stages, and our final thing here will be the butterfly. Now we're going to be extra careful with our black, and we're going to start with the antenna, and we're going to fill in most of him black, but leave those cells, those shapes we drew, orange. So finishing his body here, his thorax and abdomen. And we might have to use quite a bit of black paint here. Make sure it's really dark. Now when I'm painting around shapes where I have to be really careful like this, I typically like to do an outline around each shape. And this just helps me set them aside. And I know I won't cross that outline as I'm painting. So I have my biggest cell, and then I'm just outlining my other ones, going around extra careful each one. And you can see a little smudge I did there. My hand got into the paint earlier, but that's okay. Mistakes happen. So outlining my lower wing, outlining my shapes, going around each one with the black. And I'm really glad I did that red dots in that, because as I'm putting in the black, you can really see how there's some color change in those wings. There's, a lighter and a darker color. So I did one side, so let me do the other. Tracing first. Going all the way up to the edge of my orange I painted, and around, carefully around each of my wing cells. My orange is still slightly wet, but it's not bleeding too much. If yours was still wet and you were worried about it, you could give it a minute or two to make sure it dries before you start this black stage. Black, you can't really reverse at all, so we have to be extra careful always when we're using black. Make sure we don't have too much paint on our brush where it's going to fall off and drip on our paper. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. There's a couple areas where maybe it's a little bit light, so I'm going to go over those. Now the final step for this painting, if you so choose, is the arrows. I'm going to mix a nice blue-green color using just the blue and green from my tray. I'm just going to do some arrows to help me understand the order, starting with kind of just a swoosh, and then the top of my arrow, and just fill it in. Going up and over the other side, 2 lines, and filling in that triangle arrow shape, making sure they're pointed. And then the bottom, chrysalis to butterfly, same thing, arrow shape with a triangle. And there we have our monarch butterfly life cycle, from egg to larvae to chrysalis and butterfly. Thank you for watching. For more creative learning content, please like and subscribe. Enjoy these photos I took of the monarch butterfly life cycle.